Could the Philadelphia Eagles have an upgrade at that return spot? You're watching Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr., and a lot of people have reached out to me because there are some rumors circulating that maybe Philadelphia, because of the lack of return juice at punt returner and kick returner, could look to target Cordarrelle Patterson of the Atlanta Falcons. There's been some rumors down in the ATL that maybe he could get put on the trade block because he's a win-now player for a team that's not ready to win right now. So let's talk about Patterson here, and then we'll start to take your questions here on Eagles Now. You look at Patterson, and he kind of gives Atlanta what Deebo Samuel gives the San Francisco 49ers, and I kind of look at Cordarrelle Patterson as a Deebo Samuel light. He can impact the game running the football as a ball carrier. He can impact the game catching the ball as a wide receiver. He can also impact the game as a returner. And you look at Patterson's numbers last year in strictly running the ball. 144 carries, 695 yards, average yards per carry of 4.8 with 8 rushing touchdowns. Now, last year in 2022, he didn't have the same numbers receiving that he did in 2021, but still, you see the versatile Swiss Army knife type of ability that he brings that offense, and he's been able to do this throughout his entire career, and he's made multiple stops. Chicago, Minnesota, Atlanta. Last year, 21 catches, 122 yards, average yards per catch pretty low at 6, but again, in 2021, he was awesome. Now, he could be used as a pass-catching option out of the backfield. He can also line up at wide receiver. But this is where I'm intrigued by a player like Patterson. It's in the return game. Not too much of a punt returner, more of a kick return specialist, but when he gets his hands on the pill, he can take it to the house. His career stats with returns, very, very good. And then what he's also been able to do is just flip the field and give the offense some really good field position. In 2020, he had 18 returns, 434 yards, long of 32. In 2021, a long of 104. In 2022, a long of 102. So every time he gets his hands on the ball, especially in a year like 2019, a long of 103, he can take it to the end zone. And that special teams ability, honestly, when you think about it, it makes this team better, right? But it doesn't just make this team better as a return man. You can put him out there as a running back. You can put him out there as a wide receiver. But with the special teams unit that last year really did struggle, I think that's where Patterson could make his mark. And let's be real, he's not an every down player. So Patterson, how much would it cost as far as draft capital goes to get a player like that, of that ilk? I don't really think it costs all that much. So for Philadelphia and Howie Roseman, that's pretty intriguing. And you think about some of the returners that this team has had, they really haven't had like a dynamic returner since Deshaun Jackson. Before that, Brian Westbrook. Before that, Brian Mitchell. And when you have a loaded roster like this, you don't want any blemishes on that team. You don't want any weaknesses. Special teams is a weakness right now. The return game is a question mark. Cordarrelle Patterson, intriguing option. Appreciate everybody who's reached out to me on social media asking about that. Your questions coming up around the bend, but first, if you're subscribed to the show, I want you to type me down below in the comment section. I'm going to go back, give y'all some thumbs ups, and hit that heart icon as well because we appreciate your support of the channel. Byron Nails with a $10 super chat here. Patterson would be that one player, I believe. He could be that one guy. He also said, drink up Allie. For those of you watching the live show, the real ones know. And that's why you subscribe and turn on your notifications, because when we do go live, things can get crazy, and things get crazy on Eagles Now. Paul, with this question, should we keep Greg Ward or go for more of an under-the-radar receiver like Terrence Marshall Jr.? So Greg Ward is on the practice squad. He can be an active game day elevation up to the 53. I am intrigued, though, Paul, by a player like Terrence Marshall. Some pretty good ability. There's obviously reasons for why he hasn't been able to stick with the team and be on an active game day roster consistently. Speed concerns, body concerns, health concerns, drop concerns. But the Eagles do a good job of developing players, and sometimes it takes a change of scenery for that player to get on the right track. Robert Bromley, do you think the Eagles will still bring in a different punter? Right now, it's Aaron Sipos as the punter for this team. but they've been said to be working out punters all throughout this week. If they find a better option than Siposs, they'll drop him from the practice squad, sign that punter to the practice squad, and push him up to the roster for game day. Andrew Nathan. So let's say Siposs makes the 53 after the first couple of weeks on the practice squad. Which Eagle should get the boot? That's a good question. Off the 53? It's a very good question. Trying to think. One of the tight ends, maybe, but I think Philadelphia is pretty content with going 4 tight ends on the 53. I think they like their safeties. I think they like their D-backs. Is it a defensive lineman? Like a Marlon Tuipulotu? Is it a backup offensive lineman like a Sua Opeta? It's a very, very good question. Howie Roseman, though, he's so good at pulling off those roster gymnastics. Trace was mentioning running back, but I think Eagles are going to go running back by committee, and I think they like the 4 that they have in that room. So I think it's one of the other positions that maybe the Eagles could let go of and then re-sign real quick and pull off those aforementioned roster gymnastics. Eagles fan Kylie, how is Jalen doing in practice? Do you think that he will win every game? I imagine you're talking about Jalen Hurts, and in training camp and in the preseason, he was performing very well in practice, was still very accurate, was keeping the ball out of harm's way, did not play in the preseason at all. First time in his career, he has not played in the preseason, but a very good training camp, and the momentum is really carrying over from last year to this year, when last year in 2022 had the best training camp of his career. In 2023, he's topped that. Hopefully that translates to him continuing his success as this team's franchise quarterback for the next decade, because my goodness, what a great thing that could be if Philadelphia doesn't have to worry about that position for 10 years. Callie Green, work out a punter like Blake Gilligan. He just got cut. So what do you got, Trace? You want to put your mic on? What do you got on Blake Gilligan?
Yeah, so Blake Gilligan, former Saints punter, he's only been in the league for 2 years. So he lost the punt battle to Lou Headley, who's the Aussie 30-year-old rookie out of University of Miami.
Tatted the F up, too,
yeah,
right?
It's pretty crazy. But Blake Gilligan is a very good punter. Last year, he had a long of 68, 7 touchbacks, 77 punts for 3,571 yards.
What was the average yards
Average
per
is
punt?
46.4.
Pretty solid.
So not terrible.
Yeah,
it's not bad. So if Aaron Siposs isn't your guy, Blake Gilligan might be a sneaky one to bring in.
Callie Green, you asked the question. We have answers. Trizzy Trace with the top-tier analysis right there. Lamont Lancaster sent in a super chat a little bit earlier. Patterson for a 5th or 6th round pick. That's what I'm saying, man. Maybe it's a little bit higher than that, but here's the deal with Philadelphia. They have a lot of draft picks, a bevy of them in 2024, so they can afford to trade away some draft capital if that means going all in on this team to upgrade the roster right now. Another super chat coming in from Anthony James, and it's another $20 super chat. Hello from Fargo, North Dakota. Yes, there are Eagles fans up here. We are few, but we are proud. That's very cool. One of my favorite things is to look at all the YouTube analytics and to see the heat map of where people watch the show. It's wild. We have people watching from every pocket of America, but also worldwide, including North Dakota. Now, Anthony James, that might be a surprise to some. It's not a surprise to your boy. I've seen you tuned in. We appreciate the support. Callie Green with another one. Will Jalen Carter win Defensive Rookie of the Year? Certainly capable. And if we're looking and projecting what Jalen Carter can do this year, I think he translates as a guy who can have a year one impact. The body looks to be the part. He's physical. He's brute. He's strong. He's agile. He's explosive. He's athletic. I've talked about his versatility so much here on the show where at Georgia, he was used outside of the shoulder of the tackle. He was used at defensive tackle, defensive end, and nose tackle. He can line up all across that line of scrimmage. And we saw in joint practices against Cleveland, joint practices against Indianapolis, he was throwing opposing offensive linemen to the ground. And in that preseason game against Baltimore, first snap that he had, pressure on Josh Johnson, in which, the offensive line had him set up, right? And then Jalen Carter, this is the explosive element to his game, where the offensive lineman's in a good position, good leverage, hands on the chest, of that shoulder pad area, and then Jalen Carter, rip move, gets by him, and Josh Johnson's like, oh my gosh, how did the rookie get to me so quickly, right? Had to throw that football away. I think that Carter could end up being the best defensive rookie in this draft class. I said that the moment that the Eagles drafted him. I thought it was a great move for Philadelphia to move up from 10 to 9 to take him. Very high on his potential. Flipping the bird 85, last question of this mail sack. I think they should go international for a punter, recruit another Aussie, or a football player. So Aaron Siposs, oddly enough, and funny enough, I guess I should say, is an Aussie. But he's one of the bad Aussie punters. And I'm not sure if it's like a mental thing, because Siposs, he's had some good punts. He's had some duds, though, where you're like, bro, people don't realize. So my dad grew up in Melbourne. I have cousins who live in Melbourne still, Melbourne, Australia. Shout out Cool Rains, local viewer or loyal viewer of the show. And when you play Australian rules football, these guys will kick the ball. Now, it's a little bit different. It doesn't have pointy ends to it. It's a different style of football. But these guys can boot that ball like 60, 70 yards. So when Siposs was playing Aussie rules, he was probably doing that. He has a strong enough leg, but he's been way too inconsistent as a punter in this league. But the good news is, you want to look for another Aussies, there are more Aussies who I'm sure are itching by the bit to try to crack an NFL roster. Make sure you subscribe to the show so that you can ask questions during our live shows and we can provide answers and just chop it up with everybody, because this is your forum for all Eagles fans out there. Hit that sub button. We appreciate all of you for watching, and keep an eye out for future Eagles content every single day, because that's the standard here on the show.